Hey everyone, happy Sunday. We are here tonight to go ahead and stitch up the In the Hoop mug rugs. I'm going to give me 1 second to kind of get my iPad set up, give people a chance to find where we are. I know last week Facebook was putting things in crazy places that I don't know what they were doing with it. So I'm hoping everyone can find me. Let's see. Okay, I found myself, so that's a plus. So before we're going to go ahead and get started, I'm going to kind of move a little slow because I know it was last week. It's supposed to appear in the actual event. And it hadn't been doing that for any of the previous weeks. It was popping up in the group. And then last week it decided to put it into its own event. So Facebook does what it wants. So give everyone a chance to kind of catch up. Jen, hi, you did find me. Oh, finally people are getting notifications, and you're supposed to get a notification if you say you're going. And I don't think that was happening for a lot of people. In fact, I wasn't even getting notified, and I'm like the event organizer, and usually Facebook would give me like a, hey, go ahead and start your live. Nothing. So, hopefully everyone will find us this week. I think finding me with that little circle you'll see in the group when there's a red circle around my name, and you click that, it'll take you to live. That's probably the easiest way to go. But before we get started, make sure that you have your design loaded on your machine. There's two versions. One is an envelope style and one is a turning hole style. So the actual design is all the same. It's just the very last step, how it's going to be finished. So the turning hole style leaves a small hole along one of the edges that allows you to flip everything through it and then turn it under, press it with your iron and stitch it closed. The envelope style allows you to not have to worry about any hand stitching later, because it leaves a little gap in the back of it. The two fabrics are layered, and I'm going to show you both styles tonight. I have one going on my other machine just so we're not going back and forth, because the only difference is at the very end here. So I have my materials cut. I am using just basic quilting cotton. I like to use an interfacing on the back of quilting cottons when I use them for mug rugs. I feel like it gives them a little more stability. And the interfacing that I use most often is Pellon Shapeflex 101. It's a woven fusible interfacing. It's kind of lightweight. If you're experienced with bag making and sewing, you use it a lot. But it's nice to kind of give that fabric something to kind of give it some substance, especially if you're doing things that have satin stitchings or more dense areas, so avoid puckering in your designs. It's optional, but I do like to use it. You can try it without and see if you're happy with that. But I've got my fabrics all prepped with that already, ready to go. I'm trying to see, where is everyone's, the comments kind of disappear on me. There they are. So yeah, Penny, I don't know, Facebook is being so complicated, finding everything, but you haven't missed anything. We're just popping in. I've got stabilizer on my hoop. I have cutaway hoops just because that's my preferred stabilizer for most things, unless I need to use a tearaway or water soluble. But this is maybe 1.5, 2 ounce cutaway. You can absolutely use tearaway on this. Just use kind of whatever you have on hand. Totally fine. If you are using tearaway, there are some denser areas of this, so I probably would double up that tearaway, but you should be good to go with tearaway on this too. So this is just a matter of preference on a stabilizer on that. Penny, I use white bobbin thread for everything. I have never used a different color in my bobbin, so I just buy the pre-wounds, and they all come in white, and that's what I use every time for everything I stitch. All right, so some of the people are kind of trickling in. So I'm going to go ahead and do the first step, which is going to be like everything else so far. It's going to be our placement stitches directly on our stabilizer. Just don't use white for this step because it might be a little hard to see what you're doing, but go ahead and go. And I hope to have the other one stitched up as I was going, but to show you, but I didn't have a chance this week. I didn't get back until Tuesday afternoon, and then we did our live on Wednesday for what would have been last week's design. And yesterday was like a cleaning purge day. So I didn't get as much accomplished as I wanted to. So we're kind of doing this together for the first time. Farther away was probably better, but all right, so now we have our placement down on our stabilizer. So with mug rugs, these are kind of quilted designs, so there's something in between the layers. So you could use quilt batting, you could use fleece. I've even used foam, like not the foam for like puff designs, but like the foam used for bag making. It's called flex foam. You can use that as well. I'm just going to use some some fleece. It's a non-fusible fleece. It's not like the fleece that you buy for like say stuffies, but you could use that too. This stuff's a lot cheaper. It's typically used as a stabilizer and interfacing. Pellon makes it. They have it at the craft store. But seriously, you could use quilt batting. You could use some other fleece that you have. Just make sure if you decide to use like a colored fleece that you might have laying around, that you're not using something like a dark color if you're using a light color fabric on top, because you'll see through it. But just use whatever you want to kind of give it some loft and some substance. This is what's going to go down next in your hoop. So just make sure that this is covering all of your stitches. And then run the next step to tack down that fleece. Or the batting, whatever you're using. Try again to get this lower in here without making everyone seasick. Just leave it alone, so I'm not going to give them more motion sickness. Down that fleece that's going to be sandwiched in between our layers. All right, so this is our fleece tacked down. You can see here, that being, I'm really close again. Let me back away there. So this is it. It's just our regular placement stitches like you would see in any other in the hoop design. Pop that back on. Our next step now is we are going to add our the front fabric. Okay, so the fabric's gonna be the front of the design. So like our background, it's gonna be green. It's the watermelon. It's kind of the rind. So I picked green for this. Honestly, if you want a purple watermelon, you go for it. But mine is green. I did, like I said, I did interface the back of this with woven fusible interfacing. Pellon Shape Flex 101 is what I have on there. It's an optional step, just gives it a little more substance, a little more structure as you stitch on the design. Hi, Allie. Did you get a notification tonight, Allie? Because I know some people were, some weren't, and Facebook is making this way more complicated than it needs to be. All right, so go ahead and plop that on there. And the next step is going to serve two purposes. It's going to be our placement stitches for our applique piece, and it's going to tack down our front material here in the hoop. So I'm going to go with the gray stitching still because I can still see that through the green. If you have the same color thread as this fabric, you may want to go ahead and change it out for a more contrast color just so you can see what you're doing. But I got gray. I'm pretty sure I can see it, so we're going to go with that. Oh, good, Allie. I'm glad. It seems like Facebook doesn't know what it wants to do. And I'm here in the background trimming out the other one that I have like one step ahead. So I can hopefully have these both finished at the same time to show you how to do the backing for both versions. It would be consistent, so it'd be easier for everybody. All right, so we have our placement stitches, as you can see here, and this is where we're going to put our center fabric. So since this is a watermelon, I picked pink. Since I'm using fabric, so before we were doing appliques, we were mostly talking about vinyls. So since I'm using fabric, I'm using something on the back called Heat and Bond Light. I've already got it attached to my fabric. It is a film. And what this does, again, this is an optional step. It's going to help you when you trim this applique to keep the fabric edges from fraying, because unlike vinyl, fabric will fray, which makes it harder to trim up neatly. Okay, so I just did this ahead of time. This is an optional step. You can find this stuff at Joann, on Amazon, whatever. It's Heat and Bond Light. What you do is you've got paper on one side, like a film on the other. You cut your fabric out. Cut your sheet of Heat and Bond Light out, put your fabric on top with the kind of the sticky film side first. Use your iron to adhere that film to your fabric, leaving the paper on, and then let it cool. And once it's cool, you can just peel off that paper like I just did. So what this does, if you can see on camera, it's got like a little bit of a glimmer to it. It's like the sticky adhesive stuff here. It's actually not sticky once it's on, but it makes it way easier since it's got a little bit of adhesive quality to it, so that fabric doesn't fray on you as much when you're cutting your applique. So I always like this step for fabric appliques. Again, it's optional. It just makes it much easier to cut those applique pieces out. Hi, Dee. Yeah, Allie, I cannot do fabric appliques like Heat and Bond. Like, I'm just not that good at cutting it without making a mess. So anytime I'm using a fabric for applique, I always use it. All right, so we're gonna tack down now our applique there for our pink. What I will say about fabric, it's not quite as forgiving as vinyl is for appliques. It's not necessarily any harder, it's just a little more persnickety. It requires a little more patience because you still want to cut it close, but unlike vinyl, when you're cutting it close, you get so close in there that you trim any of those stitches. I'm just making sure that fabric doesn't pucker up on me. I don't think I put it down as flat as I would have liked to. So just making sure it's not puckering up on me here. If you trim any of those stitches while you are cutting, it will actually make it so that that piece where you snipped isn't going to get tacked down nicely with the satin. It'll leave kind of a hole or a gape on you. So fabric is just a little more of a challenge to work with, just because it takes a little more patience. But it's the same process. That heat and bond really does help with that too. So take your time when you get ready to cut the applique piece. Just take your time with it. Go slow. You can go back and trim if you need to, but go slow with it. You don't want to accidentally nick anything. Alright, so that part is done. Oh yeah, and Allie, it is once you heat it again. So once I am done here and I use an iron to this, it will actually kind of stick that piece down to the fabric behind it too. Alright, so now we just need to trim our applique. So we're trimming around all of this right here, same as we've done on the other designs. I am gonna do this kind of, it's gonna be harder to do because I am more particular with the fabric than I am the vinyl. I'm trying to get some of it on camera, but I may have to pull it off so I can see what I'm doing, because I really want to make sure that I don't nick any of those stitches. So get your good applique scissors. These are Kai 4 or 5 inch blades. I can't remember. I know I've linked them before a few times. They're awesome. They're my favorite. But I like to also kind of pull the fabric as I'm going. Kind of pulling it kind of taut. It kind of helps keep it straight. Turn. It's hard to see what I'm doing and keep this in camera. But just make little cuts. Don't go ham on this until you get a feel for how fabric cuts versus vinyl for appliques. So just kind of go a small section at a time. You can always go back in and clean it up later. So it's better to kind of cut it too wide and then go back in and clean it up before you stitch the next step, but you don't want to cut into any of those stitches. I did purposely make the satin on this particular design a little bit wider to make it easier in case it is harder for you to get close if this is your first like full applique project besides the bag tags that we did on vinyl. So it should be a little more forgiving for you. Almost there. All right. So I'm going to take a look and see any areas that maybe I want to trim up a little bit that I didn't get as close at. Go ahead and do that now. I see a little piece right here. These little pieces. I am going to trim those up. All right, I'm feeling good about that. So I'm going to plop that back on, and our next step is that satin around the pink part there. So once you're happy with how your applique pieces are being cut there and you feel like it's close enough, let me see if I can get you in a little bit. I am, I can find the right color pink. Close enough. So we're gonna run that satin there. Get it going in the other one I have over there too. What if that was an actual product, John? I would have to look it up. I've never heard of it before. And honestly, most times I tend to prefer to do vinyl appliques on things. It just depends on what it is. If it's clothing, I might kind of go either way. But like if it's already a vinyl project, a notebook cover or a bag or a bookmark, snapshot, I'm typically going to use vinyl. The only time I'm going to use fabric with for sure is probably on mug rugs, but you can still go to vinyl too, but I like the look of fabric on it for all the applique pieces. I love this fabric. This is, I'm going to say it's cotton and seal. Let me see what it is. Oh, no. It's the new cotton steel, which is Ruby Star Society, and they have the star fabric in like a bunch of different colors, and they're great for mug rugs and things where like it's got a little bit to it, but it doesn't like obscure details and stitching by just being too busy. And the green that I'm using is SX Yarn Dyed Linen. It's one of my favorite fabric lines too. I don't know if it's actually really linen or if it's just cotton, but it's got a nice kind of feel to it. And it's got different colors kind of woven into it, so it makes it a little more fun than just a one solid color. And I'm stitching on the 6x10 size on these. I find the 5x7 is like a nice kind of smaller mug rug, but 6x10 I think is my preferred size for these, but that's just me. I kind of want to too. It's like hypnotic. you. I got one machine going right in front of me and then one to my right going too. Oh, I'm so glad. So softball and baseball is done for us, thank goodness. And I'm very glad for that. So it does make for some long days on the weekend, especially for tournaments. It was super hot here this weekend. Well, no, it stormed yesterday, but Friday was like super hot. And today was pretty smoking out there. Now, so we're not waiting for it to warm up. Alright, so we're almost done with that. We're going to notice that it is not satin around this edge here, because this is what's going to be turned. You're not going to see this. So that is that. We are going to go ahead and move on to our face. So this is the eyes and the mouth. I did add this as a separate step from the seeds in case you wanted to make the seeds white or you wanted to make the eyes and the mouth white. So I'm going to do mine in black, but I did leave that separate. If you were questioning, like, why don't they all together? Just because I wanted to give you some variety if you wanted to do the eyes in a different color. If you wanted to do the seeds in white, what have you. So I'm going to do mine in black. Thread this up. And I'm going to swing over the other one, the other machine, and get that one going too. My hand's right in your face, I'm sorry. I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. And I'm still on my backup machines. I still haven't taken my other machine in to be serviced. I'll do that some point in time this week. It's just been a weird week. All right, so we're on to the face now. So the eyes and the mouth. Oh no, broken needle. Worst feeling. Also, my bobbins I was threatening to show there for a second, but it's covering it. I was almost to where like I was close to near the end of the bobbin, and I was like, should I go ahead and throw a new one in? And I was like, no, I'll live dangerously. We'll see if I'm going to regret that here in a second. Oh no! So I don't actually get, for some reason I've never gotten these machines. I'm really bad about like cleaning out the bobbin area like I should. And honestly, I probably haven't changed this needle in like, I think I've broken needle on a live recently. And that was the last time I changed the needle, and that might have been like 2 weeks ago. Now, granted, I haven't run a ton in the last week, but probably enough that I should have been changing my needle. So this is called SXEX Yarn Dyed Linen. It's by Robert Kaufman, and you can find it pretty much like any online quilt shop. I love this line. It's a ton of colors, and it's nice because it has like two colors mixed in to make one. It's not just one solid. And my machine didn't cut that jump because it's being a jerk too. See, Kenny, I wish mine would. I need that reminder. I'm gonna stop this real quick because it really bothered me that it didn't cut that jump on me. So I'm gonna cut that just because I don't want it to get like trapped under when it stitches the mouth. So let me get this up and out of the way and cut this, and then I'll feel better. Okay. And my bobbin is pulling a little bit. I'll change the bobbin after we run this step. Hi Nancy, you made it. See, Allie, I don't trust myself to do really much anything mechanically related. Like I can clean out like a thread nest and like take it apart for that, but other than that, like nope. I'm afraid that I will break it, and I probably will. So that would be super intimidating to me. But it's awesome that you can do it. I just don't trust myself. And I'm annoyed because my main machine that I have to take in now, I literally have had it for a year on June 21st, and it started like throwing up stuff at me on like June 19th. So it's still in like the year warranty from where I got it, but I haven't had to do it because I was worried I was getting ready to go out of town. But it's still under brother warranty, so I can take it into the dealer where I am, and brother should still cover whatever, but of course it happens then. That makes sense, Allie. My dad was really good at fixing stuff too, so I didn't have to worry about it, and I wasn't very good at learning, nor did I take much of an interest in it, so I just didn't. See my bobbin thread storing a little there? I don't like that. So I'm gonna change, as soon as it finishes the mouth here, I'm gonna change my bobbin too. When you see your bobbin thread like that, 9 times out of 10 it's a bobbin issue. You need to clean your bobbin area, or you need to just change your bobbin. Especially when you buy pre-wound. Sometimes you get an off bobbin, or it's just off a little bit in the actual bobbin itself, so you can just change it. And that's going to solve it most times. Or clean that area out. Kind of working from that direction on, but it happens pretty frequently. And I'll see people question in the group too, but if you see stuff happening on the top of your design like this, it's almost always a bobbin issue. And what I would do too if I wasn't on the live is honestly I would change the bobbin and I would stitch that again to go over it. But I'm not gonna subject you to it. I'll show you the difference on the one that I have stitching over there right now. Because you can see here where it looks sparse. It's not sparse, that's the white bobbin thread pulling through. And compare that to here, you can see it, like right up in there. Here, right up in there, is the other one. Maybe, I'm like really close there. Can I put it in this way and you can maybe see it? Oh no, I swear, let me pull you back. So here, this one, you see no issues with the bobbin on this. You don't see that same white sparseness that you do here on those. So that tells me that's a bobbin issue, because this is the same materials, same speed, everything, same thread. Only difference that's happening here is probably that bobbin. So I'm gonna chuck that bobbin. I mean, you can try and troubleshoot some other stuff too, like change your needle, do things like that. But first thing I'm gonna start with when I see that kind of thing is I'm gonna put a brand new bobbin in. When you get a box of like 100 of them, you're bound to have a few that maybe it just doesn't hold the same tension all the way through. Maybe it's got a little film on it. So just change my bobbin. And I almost lost the cover for that, even though it was sitting right there. All right, so there is that one. And now we are on to the glasses section. So let me get that going. That's gonna bother me so much, it's gonna annoy me, but it's fine. The other one's fine. So I'm gonna do a blue for mine, for the glasses. Sorry, just hit my phone there. Ah, I did it again. I'm sorry for making you seasick. And that should fix all that issue there. If not, then I'll change my needle, but we should be fine. So on to our glasses. Yep, I probably will black Sharpie it later. And see, yep, now I'm not seeing any bobbin thread at all, so that is absolutely the bobbin. The glasses, and after this we're going to stitch the seeds, and then we're going to add our backing after that and be done with it. So if you have not already, take a second now to go ahead and plug your iron in, just so it's nice and warm, because you're going to be here in the next few minutes, so to wait for it to warm up. Nice and crisp. None of the white thread showing. Don't ever be afraid to tuck your bobbin. I'm gonna preach to slow your machine down if you haven't already. I stitch everything at grandma speed, and you'll see that like the satin's pretty consistent the way through. Like I don't have those loops, it's not skipping stitches. When you crank your machine speed up, you're gonna see that happen a lot more often, just because of the friction and the heat that goes when it's like stitching at really high speeds. In fact, I challenge you you to, since we did patches last week, or this week actually, same week, go ahead and crank your machine all the way up for one and see what it looks like, and then do one at the slowest speed and see if you can see the difference between the two patches. Now, if you have like a 60 needle, a 10 needle, like a more industrial embroidery machine, the same rule doesn't hold as true as it does for a more domestic machine. Some of those like commercial machines are designed to stitch at those high speeds. But especially if you're using a domestic machine, like really crank that speed down and you'll get better results with it. Because obviously with a commercial machine, those machines are designed differently too. They can handle that faster, heavier stitching. Gus is hanging down here now stitching with us. So we're actually almost done with the longest parts of stitching. So after this, we've got like 7 or 8 little sleeves to do. And out of the back, it takes just a minute. It doesn't take long at all. So you are on the home stretch. You're like 90% of the way done. And not all the mug rugs that I have applique or satin. Some of them are a lot faster. But I thought it'd be nice to kind of combine some of the things we've learned already. When you're done too. Actually, while we're finishing the other one, this is the turned one I have on the hoop. I may swap it out and restitch this black part. It's gonna bother me. Oh, Cancun, super fun. I'm jealous. We're just in boring Cincinnati. We are actually going on our first ever cruise next month, taking the kids for like our summer vacation, and we're going to the Bahamas. So I'm kind of stoked about that. I actually never left the country, so I'm pretty stoked. We're just doing like a quick 3-day cruise. I thought it would be since we've never taken a cruise before, it may be a good kind of start to see how it is before we commit to something longer and being stuck on like a boat in the middle of the ocean. It seemed less scary to commit for 3 days versus like longer. So I'm excited. But have a drink in Cancun for me. You'd like a really tropical one. Alcohol optional, obviously. I just told Christy to have a drink for me in Cancun. That's pretty much it, I think, that you missed. Like a nice tropical drink with or without alcohol. So nothing important, really. We're just going to stop for one day. We just have one port. Because I was chicken to commit to any longer than a 3-day cruise, but we're actually going to like squeeze a couple days in Disney, like before and after the cruise, in case the cruise is terrible. We need at least we have a couple days of something else to look forward to and do. So we're going to be gone, I think, 6-7 days total, but just like kind of like 2 days in Disney, and then the cruise, and then for 3 days, and then 2 more days in Disney. Obviously with like the first and the last being the travel days too. Alright, so we were on to the seats. You can do these black or white, whatever you prefer to do. And again, I'm probably going to bump the camera with my arm, and I'm sorry. It's harder to see what I'm doing threading too with that like right there. I think I didn't bump you this time. All right. Stitch those C's up. So my oldest is actually, he went out of the country this year on a school trip, but the rest of us have never left the country before, so this will be our first time. It's funny that my 14-year-old is more world traveled than I am. So, Allie, I probably would like going snorkeling, but what we did, because I didn't know like what would be a good excursion to do, like what was kind of worth it, is we actually just got like a resort pass for a day at like one of the resorts down there, so we can just like kind of hang by the beach, because I was chicken. And also my youngest doesn't swim, so it's like, oh, what can we all do since we're just there for one day, so we weren't like separating. But that's something I definitely want to do at some point. And I saw there were some like things you can do, and you can go and like swim with the sea lions, the sharks. I'm trying to let some of the sharks, but the sea lions seem super cool. Just 4 more seeds left, and then we are ready to add our backing. were a little randy, for lack of a better term, and it was a little intense. So she kind of scared me away from doing the thing with the dolphins. Oh, that is really cool. So maybe I need to rethink that. Okay, I'm ready to look into it then. Maybe she just had like naughty dolphins, I don't know. All right, so we are at the step. I'm gonna let this other one finish up because I'm actually gonna swap these out because I want to run over the, no, I'm not gonna do that. I was gonna run back over the eyes that's bothering me, but I think I'll just hit that up later with a Sharpie for now. All right, so the first one that I have in here is the turn version. So for this, you just need a piece of fabric the same size as your front fabric. Go ahead and change your thread to make sure it's very similar color to your fabric that you're backing in front fabric, because you don't want anything, the closer it is to this, if you see any stitching later, it'll kind of blend in. You typically shouldn't see any stitching, but just to make sure, go ahead and pop the same color in there. Because what I have it set at, this last outline will actually be a little smaller than what our first layers were, so it'll kind of blend in on you. So again, this is our turn version first. So just take that fabric, lay it right over, and it's going to leave a hole along the top edge, so like the flat edge of the watermelon top, that, make sure I'm covering here, I cut this piece a little small, that is going to leave you that area that you can turn that through. There we go. All right, so once you have that down, usually you can just lay it on and just keep an eye on it. If it starts shifting on you, watch it. You really shouldn't need to pin it or tape it. You should be good on that. So, but as you go, just kind of keep an eye on it so it's not bubbling up on you. Just kind of keep my hand close by. If I need to shift or smooth that fabric as it goes, I can do that. So Allie, it would be right side down. So if you're using pattern fabric, you want the wrong side up and the right side against the fabric that's already in your hoop. So now you're looking at the back side of your fabric right now. And it's kind of hard to tell with this fabric because it's not really right, it's the wrong side. But yeah, you want your fabrics to be right side together. So the wrong side of your fabric is what you'll see now that it's stitching on. And sorry I didn't mention that, Senator. I should have mentioned that when I set it down. So thank you for asking. Again, I'm just making sure I don't have it shifting or bubbling. I'm in good shape, but I just keep an eye on it just to make sure. If you want, you could use some magnets or pins too around the outside to hold it in place, but I find that honestly just keeping an eye on it and just kind of making sure you smooth it if needed as you go works just fine. When this finishes stitching here, I'm actually going to pop the other one that I'm working on and bring it over to this hoop and show you the envelope version right now. And then we'll go to the table together once they're both finished. I'll show you how to cut them out and iron them and all that stuff. So let's go back here, delete this one, delete. Okay, and hopefully I loaded the, I did, perfect. Okay, so I have now the envelope version that I'm getting ready to do. So I'm going to take the turn version off, and I've got the envelope version all stitched up except for the backing. And you may want to take a second too. The other one not so much, but on this one I've got some longer jumps. You can even see, I think they'll see, I've got some longer jumps. I'm going to take a second and I'm just going to trim those just in the off chance it's going to get stuck. They should be short enough, but better safe than sorry, so you're not having to fish them out later. So I'm just going to trim a few of those up real quick. And normally I like to kind of trim the jumps as I go anyways to the colors. I just find it easier, but this one isn't quite as important because they should be out of the way of all the next designs, but it's a good practice to get into. So you're not getting little loose ends trapped under other things to be cut out later when it's trapped under stitching. There, get most of them cleaned up. All right, so load that up. So for the envelope, you're actually gonna have 2 pieces of fabric. I need to go to my last step here. So this one does not leave it whole for turning at all. It stitches all around the outside of it. So you're gonna have 2 pieces of fabric, and I like to cut them. So I'm using 6 by 10. So I would cut this probably, I wanna say I cut these like the width, I usually do like 8 inches just to be safe. You could probably get with less. So the width is 8 inches, and then the actual length that I'm cutting for the back, if I'm doing the envelope, is gonna be more like almost, I would say, almost 10 inches each. So you're gonna have like 20 inches, and you can cut that shorter if you need to, but I like to err on the side of caution, not have too little. What you're going to do is you're going to want to take that one of those short edges, sorry, I just whacked the phone, and you're going to press that under, okay? Because this is going to be visible on the back of your mug rug, so make sure there's no raw edges showing. So take a second and just fold that down 1.5 inch-ish, just on one of those short edges. Once you have that, go ahead and lay it down to where that fold is kind of lining up around the center of your mug rug where that short edge will be. It's kind of ish. Again, there's no exact science where you need to put it exactly. If it's closer to one side than the other, it's fine. So again, this is going to be the right side of your fabric is down. Okay, that edge is folded under and pressed there. So this is the wrong side that you're looking at right now. Take the other half, the other piece of fabric that you had, and you're going to lay that right over top. Make sure it's nice and even, and make sure that those 2 pieces of fabric overlap. Okay, and I like to go kind of almost that where that raw edge is here to the raw edge here. Again, it's not exact on that. You just want to make sure that you've got them kind of centered and that front piece is hitting your fabric. Okay, so once this is down, we're going to run around the entire outsides, our last step. There's no hole for turning. So go ahead and get that loaded up. Now with this, oops, and see, look, mine, see? So sometimes it will kind of shift on you a little bit, especially when you're getting started and you like start on the last step when it's set up for the first step. So fix that. All right, sometimes this little lip might get stuck on you as you're going. So watch this kind of like a hawk, because if you need to, stop your machine and just adjust to make sure that lip isn't getting stuck and pulled by your foot. So, and I'll show you what I mean when we get over to this side over here. Oh, what am I doing? I'm like way off. Oh, I put that way, way, way off. Pardon me while I rip that out real quick. I went way too far close on that. Just making errors in real time for you. We don't want to be that close. That's what happens when I work late at night. All right, I'm just gonna pick those out real quick and I'm gonna move it up a little bit farther. I didn't want it to be that far down. And that's the nice thing about watching it closely when you get started, because if you do have an error, you can catch it real quick and not have it mess up your entire design. So I'm just gonna pluck out those 5 stitches real quick and then shift it back up where it should be instead of all the way at the bottom. I just have an old school seam ripper. It's nothing fancy, but it gets the job done. All right, now we're in better shape. Honestly, and I kind of find that seam rippers will get dull after a while, so I just replace them pretty frequently. I just bought this pack of these guys on Amazon. It was like 10 bucks for a pack of 5 of them. They're pretty cheap, but they work. And I like the end of it too, because it's kind of like an eraser material, and they're great for using, if you use like the film water soluble stabilizer, you can kind of use it as an eraser to pull that out. All right, so I'm gonna pull this up a little bit. So make sure you don't go as far back as I did. Now we're gonna start all the way over. I hope I didn't rip that on the seam. Let's just start that whole step over again. All right, here we go. The error I made there was that second piece of fabric I put way too far down instead of overlapping it there on the center like I should have. I wasn't watching, it's kind of hard to see, so I went way too far back and it ended up being at the edge of my fabric here, and that would have made it like really difficult to deal with. All right, so as we get close here, you're gonna see it make hedge there, right there on that lip, so I'm gonna watch it. If I have to, I'm gonna stop my machine. See, it's kind of pulling right there a little bit. I'm gonna stop my machine, I'm gonna lift my presser foot up and make sure that fabric is situated under the presser foot, so that way it doesn't drag this fabric away. So honestly, the turning method is the kind of the quickest and the easiest method to finish in the hoop, but the results on the envelope are great if you don't like to hand stitch things and you don't worry about having a hole to kind of deal with later. So they both have their own like pros and cons. Just don't stitch through your finger. I should be using a stiletto or an awl here on the fabric, but I'm not. If you don't know what a stiletto or an awl, you should have an awl for snaps that you use, but they're honestly great, especially when we go into doing in the hoop bags. If you don't already, make sure that you get yourself an awl or a stiletto, because this allows you to hold close to the presser foot and the needle without having to worry about getting your fingers shown through, because no one wants that. And obviously it would jack up your machine too. So this is what I should have been using there, but I didn't. So I'm gonna do as I say, not as I do. Pretend I use that. Yeah, honey, making mistakes is kind of like my hobby at this point. I'm really good at making mistakes. So again, when we come down to this lip here, which you can't see because you're off camera, you may have the same issue where you may need to stop it and then lift up your presser foot. You can leave your needle in the fabric and make sure that that doesn't get stuck where it's like shoving it through again. And I'll use the stiletto this time. I'll be smart about it as I keep sticking my finger in there. See, look, okay, I'm being safe now. I think it's gonna catch. So I got my finger on the presser stop button. Yep. See here how it's not gonna go under that? What's gonna happen if I kept stitching? It's gonna pull this like this and make a mess. So keep an eye on it. Lift up your presser foot, put it back down. And actually, I think I need to do one more stitch before it catches. Yep. And you may need to do it a couple times until you get close enough for it to catch under. And I think I'm there now. And I'm still using my fingers. In there. There we go. Wants to like pucker up on me there. And that's the one kind of persnickety thing about the envelope is those little lips on you. Sometimes will make it so that you get stuck. So we'll just smooth it out there and we should be back in business. Yeah, we're good now. So if this looks intimidating to you, start with the turn version just because it's way easier. And honestly, the envelope, it's not really harder. It's just you have to watch a lot closer. It's not something you can just like push go in the last second walk away. You kind of have to watch it to make sure those layers don't get stuck under your presser foot. Okay, so we are done with that part. I'm gonna get the table set up with my mat. And then we're going to cut them out and we're going to press them and we're going to have 2 mug rugs. All right, so let me get my iPad over here so I can see. Oh, Allie, don't stick your finger in a 16. That sounds like a really, really bad time. All right, I'm going to move you over here. Hopefully it won't make you seasick. And get you set up. I dropped you. That's like the second week I've done that. Sorry. I hope that didn't hurt. I'm dropping people now. All right, let's see where I am. I'm very crooked, but I am here. Okay. Sorry that I dropped everybody. Hopefully I didn't give you a concussion. All right, so I've got 2 hoops to cut out. All right, so I'm going to start with the turned version. Honestly, and I spent yesterday was like house cleaning day, and I swear like my hands and my wrists are like sore because I feel like I'm old now. I like pulled muscles cleaning. To be fair, I purged my 9-year-old's room with like so much stuff. All right, so we've got this one out. We've got the envelope version with like my zeros of hand strength left today. All right, 2 mug rugs ready to be cut out. All right, so take your handy dandy scissors, whatever you're gonna use to trim with. I'm gonna start with the turn version. So I'm gonna start here at one of the edges. I'm gonna cut around. With this one, try and get as close to the stitching as you can on the area, not close to the turning hole. Don't cut that yet, and I'm going to tell you why. But if you start, don't cut into your turning hole area. Just get around the rest of the edges. Try and get as close as you can without cutting into the stitches. That would be really bad. So don't freak out too much. If you can't get super close, it's better to be a little farther away and not clip your stitches than to accidentally clip your stitches. And if you're using fabric and the thread and you can't see the contrast, flip it over and you can go on your other side too. So what you'll see is this last set of stitching we did is actually smaller than all the other ones. That'll help so you are not going to see the other stitches and the layers. So if you're having a hard time seeing this, like say you're using green on green, flip it and go on your stabilizer side. All right, so when you get to your turning hole area, instead of cutting out as close as you can to this, I actually want you to move away from it and kind of come out like about an inch, inch and a half, like that. Cut down and do the same thing. When you get to where your turning hole ends, go down into it and then make that turn. And then continue again, cutting as close as you can to the stitch without cutting through them. Now, what that's going to do for you is it's going to make it really easy to tuck that extra fabric under and into that turning hole when we turn it, so you're not having to worry about fighting with that edge sticking out. All right, so this is our turned one. So if you're using tearaway, go ahead and tear that away now. I also like to take a second and cut this batting out of that excess from my turning hole too, just to kind of cut out the bulk. So fold your front and your back fabric together. This is an optional step. You don't have to do it, but I find it's easier to turn it under if I get that batting out of there. So like that. So I'm left with this right now. This is the back side. This is the front side that we saw in our hoop. And just go ahead and now turn that guy inside out through that hole. It's a little more of a challenge on the smaller sizes than it is on the bigger sizes, but turn as much as you can with your fingers and your hand. And then you're gonna take something like a chopstick or an old kind of blunt knitting needle, and you're gonna go in and you're gonna get in these corners right here with that to kind of make those corners out and crisp. So I have this little plastic guy here I like to use. Just stick that right there into the top to get those edges nice and puckered out on you, or pushed out on you so you're not have the puckering on it, and you're left with this. Okay, so from here, go ahead. Actually, I'm going to cut my stabilizer. I use cutaway. I'm going to cut that out of that too to make it easier to get that turned under. All right, so here I am. Now we left this excess because I want you to push that down into that turning hole, and it's going to make it easier for you to get all that lined up without having stitches sticking out on you. So I'm here. Let me get my, got my iron on. Let me get my pressing mat. And honestly, this is another reason on fabric on lug rugs too, especially if you're using the turn version. Vinyl can be kind of a challenge to work with because you do need to press this to get this a nice smooth edge here. And some of this with pressing is kind of pushing it under as you're kind of going. But let me grab. But just don't be afraid to really get in there with the iron, especially on those edges where you turned, to get that nice and smooth. Flip around to the back side, see where you're at, press it down on the back side too. If you need to adjust how much fabric you got pushed into that turning hole, do that there too. But also give it a good press on the back side. So here is where you're left with that turning hole, okay? So you have a couple options here. You can either hand stitch this close with a ladder stitch. You can take it to a sewing machine and you can stitch across the top. You could use some double-sided tape back here and put that through, or you can glue it. So for me, right at this moment in time, I'm not really feeling like I want to sew anything. So I'm going to do the cheater method, and I'm going to use some fabric glue. So with this, you don't want to use a ton of this. I'm using fabric tack. I've got a big bottle that you can go to any craft store whatsoever. You do not need a lot of this. You go small. If you need to add more later, once it dries, you can do that. I'm also going to grab some clips to kind of help keep it in place. So some sewing clips here, just so once I glue it, it'll kind of hold it together for me so it doesn't shift. Just get on in there with a very, very small amount. Once I get it down to my nozzle here, a very small amount. You don't want it to ooze through. So kind of go back here. If you can see through my hand, you don't want to go right on the top, kind of go down into that edge a little bit. And I have a real thin line here. And then I'm going to take the glue and I'm going to push the fabric on it just to kind of get it so it's not oozing out on me. And if you can see, here's where I'm at. So there's not much in there. Go ahead and fold that over. And then take your clips, and just clip it in place while it dries. And it needs to probably dry overnight. You can honestly do the cheater thing too, and you can iron it. And the iron kind of the heat, which I'm doing on my cutting board. Don't ever do that. I'm really tired. Use a mat. If you use some heat on it too, it'll kind of help set it and it'll make it quicker so you don't have to wait overnight. That's the cheater method too. But if you don't want to do that, clip it just like I had it and let it sit overnight. So let's pretend that I had this sitting up overnight and it's done. But see there, it's closed now. And if I wanted to and get it closer, I could add more glue, but we're sealed up. And trim these up, obviously, all the jump stitches, but I'm gonna save that for a later time. And we're gonna move on to the envelope back. The same steps we just did, minus me trying to put my iron right on my cutting mat. Honestly, the iron is on the highest setting. So I know supposedly like embroidery thread like has a lower heat setting than sewing thread, but it's polyester. So I feel like unless your iron is like the temperature of the sun, you're gonna be okay. You can also get yourself a pressing cloth, like Teflon pressing cloth, or even a piece of fabric and lay it between the iron and the thread if you're worried about it, but I've never had an issue with it. But I also haven't tried it on like metallic thread or on glow in the dark thread. That might be something more apt to melt than just kind of your run-of-the-mill polyester embroidery thread. All right, so now we're on to our envelope version. This time we're gonna cut around all of it just like we did the turning one, except for we're not gonna leave that gap for the turning hole to come out. We're just going all the way around because there is no open area stitches around our stitches at all.